Top Hamas official Salah Aruri, who headed West Bank operations, has been killed in a Beirut blast.
5 crew members of a Japan Coast Guard aircraft headed for the quake-stricken west coast have died after it collided with a second aircraft in a Tokyo airport.
Israel's Supreme Court has overturned a law at the heart of Benjamin Netanyahu's controversial judicial overhaul project. The situation remains tense in the flood areas of Europe. Areas of Germany and 10 French departments are particularly affected.
A top Hamas official, Salah Aruri, has been killed in a Beirut blast. The leader headed the West Bank operations and was one of the founders of Hamas's military wing. Whilst the UN urges for a maximum restraint from all parties to prevent from any further violence. Lebanon's state-run national news agency said the blast happened whilst a meeting of Palestinian factions was being held and was carried out by an Israeli drone. But Israeli officials declined to comment. The blast killed at least 4 people, injuring several more. If Israel is behind the attack, it could mark a major escalation in the Middle East conflict. Hezbollah leader has vowed to retaliate against any Israeli targeting. Israel's army says several thousand troops would be taken out of Gaza in the coming weeks, with the plans for a low-intensity campaign. But on the same day, drone footage showed destruction of a residential building in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza, caused by Israeli airstrikes in which they claim to have killed a major Hamas commander. The Palestine Red Crescent says it's established its first organized camp in Khan Yunis for displaced Palestinians. Israel has secured its border with Gaza and announced the first phase of a program to encourage those who were driven out of their homes following the October 7 attack by Hamas militants to return.
לפי המלצת צה"ל ומערכת הביטחון, אנחנו נחזיר בקרוב את היישובים שנמצאים בטווח של 4 ועד 7 קילומטר בצפון העוטף אל בתיהם. קבוצה ראשונה של 7 יישובים כבר נקבעה, הם קיבלו הודעות. הקיבוץ דורות שבו אנחנו נמצאים עכשיו הוא אחד מהם.
Thousands were forced to leave their homes in southern Israel following the October 7 attack, when militants rampaged through numerous communities, killing around 1,200 people and abducting around 240. Israel still has around 129 hostages to free. Meanwhile, Hamas released footage of a barrage of rockets launched just after midnight on New Year's Day from Gaza towards central and southern Israel. No injuries were reported.
Israel's Supreme Court has overturned a law at the heart of Benjamin Netanyahu's controversial judicial overhaul project. The judges ruled on Monday by a slim majority to throw out a law that would limit the court's own powers, saying it would severely damage Israel's democracy. The decision has the potential to plunge the country into a political crisis as it fights the war in Gaza. Last July, Israel was rife with political division and daily street protests. The unrest sprang from the government passing a law known as the Reasonableness Bill. It removed the power of Israel's supreme and lower courts to cancel government decisions deemed to be extremely unreasonable. Hundreds of protesters called for the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli leader, who has been accused of clinging on to power by pandering to the extreme right in his coalition, argues that the changes are required to redress the balance between judges and politicians. Monday's ruling to throw out July's legislation could reignite tensions that rocked Israel over in the summer and split the unity government in the wake of Hamas's 7th of October attacks.
Several people are reported to have been killed in renewed Russian air attacks on Ukraine, which targeted Kyiv and the northeastern city of Kharkiv. 3 people died in the capital and the surrounding region, and 1 in Kharkiv. People took shelter in metro stations after warnings that ballistic missiles had been fired at the city. Ukraine defense officials said dozens of missiles and drones were shot down. but both cities still suffered significant damage, whether through direct hits or falling debris. Around 100 people were said to have been injured. On Monday, Russia launched one of its most intensive air attacks since the beginning of the invasion. It follows Ukraine's air assault on the Russian city of Belgorod, which reportedly killed dozens of people. Five crew members of a Japan Coast Guard aircraft that collided with a Japan Airlines plane have been killed, authorities in Japan confirmed on Tuesday. Japan's Coast Guard said 5 of 6 crew members were missing after the incident. The captain was seriously injured. The 379 occupants of the passenger plane, 367 passengers, including 8 children and 12 crew members, are all reported to have been evacuated safely before the plane was engulfed in fire. According to the Tokyo Fire Department, at least 17 crew members and passengers are confirmed to be injured. The Coast Guard said the collision involved one of its planes that was headed to Niigata Airport on Japan's west coast to deliver aid to those caught up in a powerful earthquake that struck on New Year's Day, killing at least 48 people.
At least 55 people have died in a series of powerful earthquakes that hit western Japan. Aftershocks continued to shake Ishikawa Prefecture and nearby areas a day after a magnitude 7.6 trembler slammed the area. Japanese media reports said tens of thousands of homes were destroyed. Water, power and cell phone service were still down in some areas.
仕事でね、家にいなかったんですよ。で、もしいれば多分危なかったと思います。この津波で。地震はまあどこも一緒で、うちの中はあれなんですけど、津波がそこからもろに入ったので、もしもおったら危なかったです。
Japanese Prime Minister said,
現在発生している停電や断水、通信の途絶についても現地に作業員が入り復旧を進めているところです。
The city of Wajima, about 500 kilometers from Tokyo, is one of the hardest hit, while some 32,000 people have been evacuated in Ishikawa and Toyama prefectures and other nearby areas. Local air and train services remain suspended. Japan's meteorological agency has lifted all tsunami warnings but advised vigilance as other major quakes could happen.
The situation remains tense in the flood areas of Europe. The German weather service warns of continuous rain and water levels rising again. Regions in Saxony and Nantes, Thuringia and Lower Saxony are particularly affected. In France, 10 departments are still under flood alert. They are located in the west and north of the country. In November, the villages of Bourte and Lumbre in the Pas-de-Calais department suffered unprecedented flooding. Now the scenario is repeating itself.
Inondation comme la première fois, donc c'est très très angoissant. On se demande quand ça va s'arrêter et où est-ce qu'on va être logé, parce que pour la deuxième fois, c'est affreux.
Showers overnight and over the past few hours have caused several Pas-de-Calais rivers to burst their banks, including the Aar, Lys and Hem. Between 15 and 30 millimeters of rain are expected in the department over the next few hours.
South Korea's main opposition leader, Lee Jae-myung, was stabbed in the neck during an official visit to the southern city of Busan. Lee was airlifted to hospital. Police said the attacker, a man in his mid-60s, intended to kill him. He had initially approached him for an autograph. The opposition party later said Lee is recovering in an intensive care unit at a Seoul hospital following a 2-hour operation. The Liberal leader is seen as an anti-elitist hero by his supporters. Harvard University's president resigns after controversies over plagiarism and anti-Semitism, after ambiguous statements about anti-Semitism last month in the US Congress. Claudine Gay, the first black president of the prestigious university, has been under scrutiny for weeks for her management of institutional communication around the war between Israel and Hamas. Harvard has appointed economist and physician Alan Garber to take over the job as interim president.
Paris hotel prices have already tripled for the Olympic Games. With less than 7 months to go, a study carried out by Consumers Protection Association has already raised the alarm over prices charged by certain hotels during the Games. Rooms, sometimes more than 200% higher, could rise up to nearly 500%. The prices mean disappointment for many.
Se réjouissait d'être venu maintenant à Paris parce qu'on ne viendra pas durant les Jeux Olympiques à cause de ça, voilà.
For the Olympics then, because of high prices, so we are not coming to visit them.
The average room rate was multiplied by 3 for the opening night ceremony alone.
Période classique hors JO, on est sur un tarif à 330 € en moyenne pour la chambre classique. On monte à 530 € au début des JO, donc autour du 26 juillet. Il faut quand même que je m'aligne un petit peu avec les confrères concurrents des alentours. Ça reste quand même une aventure un peu exceptionnelle et donc on essaye de profiter un petit peu nous aussi.
French authorities will carry out checks at 10,000 hotels and restaurants across France ahead of the Paris Olympics next year in order to limit expected massive price hikes during the Games. A total of 16 million tourists are expected to visit the French capital during the Games.